Greetings and salutations. Welcome to Knife Chats with Tobias. I've been wanting to talk about bait knives for a long time and just have never gotten around to doing it, primarily because I've always wanted to do like a history on these knives, and there's kind of a big void on it. It's one of those kind of knives that, knife historians just don't talk about because they're just really inexpensive knives, and it's not a knife that knife companies in general tend to make because probably because there's just no money in it. But they are pretty cool knives, especially if you do a lot of fishing. And I used to do a lot of fishing. I haven't gone fishing in a year or two now, but I want to get back into it again pretty soon. But anyway, I want to talk to you about bait knives, and I'm going to tell you as much as I know and where I think they came from, because I don't know exactly where they started. But it seems like a logical evolution of the knife. So now let's start off by saying exactly what a bait knife is, and it's basically the utility knife that the angler is going to use. It's not his knife that he's using for cleaning his fish or processing his fish. It's the knife that he's going to be using for, well, cutting bait and just about anything else that he needs to use, any kind of other stuff that he might have to cut up or anything. Opening packages of new lures, things of that nature, cutting line, if cutting tree branches, if the line is fouled in it, stuff like that. So it's your utility knife that you're using so that you don't screw up your fillet knife or whatever knife you're going to be using for cleaning your fish. And so it could be just about anything in the tackle box. And I got a feeling that in the beginning, bait knives were something as simple as this. This is just a kitchen steak knife. But you throw that in a tackle box and you got something that you can use for everything. Matter of fact, you could even still use this one for processing fish, but it's that knife, you don't care what happens to it. It's a nice, inexpensive knife, and you're just going to be using it for everything. And it's not necessarily there for the job of cleaning up your fish or anything. Yeah, you could use a bait knife for cleaning your fish, but it's really just your utility knife. So a basic steak knife, it might have been where it started from. But knife companies, they're not going to want you to have something like that, so they would have the little bird and trout knives. These are small enough to go in a tackle box or anything else. That's why they're called a bird and trout knife. They're for cleaning fish, though. Same with the little bit bigger bird and trout knives. These are, might have been a bait knife, but they're just the basic knife at that point. So it seems to me that somewhere along the way, knife companies and other people said, how can I make this knife better and more useful for the fishermen? And that's when your kitchen paring knife or your steak knife or your little hunting knives become more of a knife designed specifically for fishing or to be used more usefully by a fisherman. And so what we have here are a couple examples of early fishing knives, and this one is the Murphy Fisherman's Pal, one of my favorite little knives. But this is more of a fish knife, and what you have across the top here is the rough edges there for scaling a fish. So you would scrape and scale the fish with it. And it's got a stiff enough blade that you can also cut up your bait and everything else. So it's a multi-use knife for the fishermen. Here's one also that was made for South Bend. South Bend is a tackle company, and if you notice, this one looks a lot more like a steak knife than a hunting knife. See the difference there? This began life as a hunting knife and became a knife that could be used for the fishermen because of the scaler on the back. This one also has a scaler on the back, but this scaler is a little sharper than this one. This one will work really well for scaling, but this one's a little bit sharper, and you're getting to the point where now you can actually use that scaler for taking off fins and stuff on fish, so cutting through fish bone and stuff like that. And that's where you start turning your fishing knife into a bait knife, because you're going to be able to do a lot more with it once you have that bone saw on there, or the serrated edge on the back side. And that's where we get to the bait knife, at least the modern bait knife. And these would have probably been, they just call them a fish knife, but they were probably more useful for cutting up fish and gutting them, yes, but they were not a very good knife for a fillet knife. So here we have the fillet knife, and for those who are not familiar, the fillet knife has a nice flexible blade so that you can actually fillet the fish a lot easier when you're doing the processing and stuff. This one's by Rapala. But it's the blade, because of how thin it is and how flexible it is, it's not the best blade for for heavy use or for hard cutting or anything like this. This is not the kind of knife that you're going to want to be, you can use it for, but it's not the one you want to use for continuously cutting off fins or cutting off heads of fish, or chopping up fish into small bits and stuff to use as bait, or anything else that you're going to be using for bait, or also for cutting line and cutting foul gear and all that other stuff. These knives, with the flexible blade, you're more likely to break them. Plus, they're going to get dull relatively quickly, and then you're going to have to sharpen them when it's time to actually, fillet your fish. So that's why you don't want to use the fillet knife for your other basic utility knife, which is commonly referred to as a bait knife. So now this is probably one of the more common bait knives you'll find today. This one was sold under the South Bend line, but just about every other company will also have this knife, and it's just a plastic handle with a short blade. It's probably going in about that far, and these things sell at tackle shops and stuff like that for all of like $2. These are the kind of knives that you can get at Walmart for $1.99 or 99 cents on sale and stuff. And this is the kind of knife that most anglers will just go ahead and grab and pick up and throw in their tackle box, because they're just going to beat the snot out of it anyway. Made out of really cheap steel and everything else. It's got an edge that you can sharpen with just about anything, and you can get them pretty sharp. So, and that's the important thing, and all you're doing is cutting up bait with it. This has still got the basically the fish scaler back going on, so it isn't the world's greatest knife. Now, almost every bait knife I've run across will have right there, they'll have a lanyard hole so you can attach some kind of shoelace to them or something. Matter of fact, many of them will come with a shoelace attached to them. And that's really all you need. You don't need anything fancy, because this is an actual working knife, and you got enough handle usually to grip and do what you need, so you don't need an extra piece of string or anything. But one of the things that allows you to do, though, is it allows you to attach basically a float to your knife, so that in the event it falls into the water, you don't lose your knife. And you don't need that big of a float, surprisingly. This little float here will actually hold up this knife. It's out of your way and everything else. You don't have to always have it on there, but if you're working by the water or close to the water, you're worried about dropping your $2 knife into the water, you got a float on it. You'll be able to, it's going to drop in the water, your float's going to be there, you'll be able to retrieve it. So that's the other thing with most bait knives, is they will have a lanyard hole so you can attach a flotation device to them, because they don't float by themselves. one of the cool things about this one, now this is like I said, this thing is a $2 knife, but notice how they have shaped the handle so that as you get up towards the blade, you can actually pinch down on there and it feels comfortable, so you can get in with close work and everything else. So a well thought out $2 knife for the tackle box. They rarely come with a scabbard. These the other ones I'll be showing in a minute almost always come with a scabbard, but that's just to protect you. Usually what you'll end up doing is wrapping some cardboard around the blade so you don't have to worry about cutting yourself when you reach in there. But you might want to grab a bit bigger of a float, but this one will, like I said, hold this knife up. And this is about par for the course on the weight of a bait knife. The things are super light because, well, you don't want to get tired just holding the knife. Let's move on to what the modern bait knives look like. This is kind of like the transitional ones from the old wooden knives from the 60s into the modern plastic ones with the cheap, probably 420 blades. I think that's usually what they'll end up using, is like a 420 stainless steel. I've seen a couple that are listed as 440. And these are the ones that are primarily made by tackle companies like Rapala, South Bend, a couple other companies. And you'll see that there's a resemblance to all of them, but the new ones are much more versatile for the angler than these knives are. Okay, so this one here is the laser. This is the Berkeley laser bait knife. I don't think it's made anymore, but it's one of my favorites. One of the things that it has is a very common feature on bait knives. If you notice this cutout spot up here, that's where you have a little line cutter. So it's like a little cutout. Let's take it out of the sheath. You see the little cutout there? That's so you can cut your line without removing the knife out of the little scabbard. And then notice the scabbard is just full of drain holes, so that you can shove the knife in there wet and not have to worry about anything. But if you're just cutting line, you can just take the knife as it is, run it into the line and cut it. What you see now is you've got the cutting edge here. Again, it's like you're talking about 420 steel. It's nothing strong here. And then you've got a serrated edge on top, and the serrated edge is there so you can cut fins and cut through fish bone and everything else when you're cutting up bait and anything else. Yeah, you could actually process fish with it, but it's not a fillet blade at all. It's a very stiff blade. Notice the way the handle is set. It's so that you can actually pinch up on there and everything. And the tang goes in about probably that far. These are never a full tang knife. And you can also get the hand in there with your lanyard, and you're never going to drop it overboard if you're doing some cutting with it or anything else like that. So this is a really nice knife, and well made, well constructed, as stiff as can be, and you don't have to worry about anything. You can throw it in your tackle box all nasty and dirty, pull it out next time, and it's not going to be rusted or anything. And you notice it's got a nice positive hook there, and you got your little guard there, the integrated guard into the handle. This one's got a really good grip on it too, a much better grip than what you have on the other South Bend knife that is right there. I'll do some comparison pictures in the slideshow. But this was one of the first ones I picked up, and I got that one. It's like, man, that is a really good knife. And then I started looking at other bait knives to see what else was out there. This remained one of my favorite. And again, this is by Berkeley, or was by Berkeley, not a knife company. Berkeley is a tackle company, so they just sent off and had somebody else make these knives for them. Almost every bait knife you're going to find is probably made in China or somewhere like that. There are some American-made ones. We'll get to those in a minute. Now this one has shown up on the channel a couple times before. This is the Evolution bait knife. Evolution is also a tackle company again. And you see once again it has the little line cutter notch in there. And in this case they've gone with a zombie green, and then it's covered in fish skeletons. And this is something that Evolution thought of real quickly. And these go, again, they're in the $7 range. You're not talking about a very expensive knife. But what Evolution has done is they've made this like same pattern with the silver skeleton fish in there, in like hunter orange and black, and green and a couple other colors. They also have other ones with other kind of prints on there, so they are definitely looking at it going, hey, you know what, if we make these in a variety of schemes, we might be able to sell more of them. And that's what they've done. And but otherwise it's still nothing but your basic bait knife here. You see you've got the cut out across the top there, the serrated edge on the top for cutting through bone, and then a nice sharp edge. Again, I believe they use a 420 steel. Almost all of these will have a nondescript steel. And you've got a full grip for holding the knives. Most of these knives come in right at 8.5 inches. They're not big knives because they're something that you get thrown into, the tackle box. And again, you see the lanyard holes in the back there. And notice the very last lanyard hole has a line cut through in the back of the pommel here, so that when you attach the string, it'll be out of the way when you're holding the knife. So it's a well thought out knife, and not a bad idea. And again, full holes through the scabbard, and you slip it in and it locks in place. And these things are surprisingly strong. They hold the knife pretty well. I've yet to have one break, and I've attempted it, pulling them out and in. It feels kind of funny when you're pulling them out, because you keep thinking you're going to cut yourself as you feel that blade coming through. And you definitely have to make sure you position it right when you're pushing it in. But really nice little design with the Evolution knives. Now, the Rapala or Rapala, whichever way you want to call it, it's very similar to the one by Evolution, except it's got a harder plastic handle. Most of them have a very soft grip. This is a harder plastic. You do notice that it's got the notches cut with the lanyard hole there. It also has a lanyard hole on this end, so you could actually hang it from a hook or something like that with no problem. What it's lacking though is it doesn't have the cutout for the line cutter, but otherwise it's about the same kind of knife. You got your again, your fish scaler or your serrated edge on top, and your cutting edge, your fine edge on the bottom. So bone cutter and fin remover, and then just your blade for slicing and dicing. And this one has also a softer scabbard. But, that's the Rapala one. Again, all of these are in the $6-7 range. You can probably get them for cheaper if you, depending on where you went to. Okay, now here's two other knives, and if you notice, they look very similar in design, and that's because basically they are the exact same knife, just by different companies. The zombie green one here is out of South Bend. This one was made by Thompson. Notice the handles are very much the same. The scabbards are the same and everything else. The only difference is this one will read Thompson, and you pay a little bit more for this one. This is supposedly 440A stainless steel. The South Bend one, it has a mystery steel in it. I'm going to show you the South Bend because I like the zombie green better. So if you notice, instead of the funny latch on the bottom here that you push on and release, that puts your thumb in the way of the blade, the one here by South Bend has it on the side. You got a thumb release there, You click on it, it comes off, and then you have the blade. And once again, you have the serrated edge across the top there for your fish bones and stuff, and then your cutting edge or your fine edge down here for all your other work. It's got a nice feel to it in the hand and everything. What you're lacking though is a lanyard hole. You could use this as a lanyard hole if you wanted to. And you also notice it does have the line cutter notch in the blade there. And notice all the drain holes as well. And you slip it in and it locks. Much better lock in place on that. So again, $5–6 for these kind of knives. And you can see there's a little bit of variety in them, and they often will come in different colors and everything. So especially if you're a person who is just getting into knife collecting and you want to collect something really cheap if you're on a budget, these kind of bait knives are kind of interesting and kind of worthwhile. And the real thing is they're also very useful. They're dirt cheap. They don't cost a whole lot of money, and they do what they're supposed to do, which is cut stuff. Yeah, you're going to need to sharpen them quite often, but they cut stuff. Now let's move on to a little bit more expensive models. I'm not sure why I'm going to show this one. This is the Shakespeare bait knife, and it's a 10-inch model instead of 8 inches. And notice it's a spear point blade going on. And you also have a serrated edge, a fine serration edge up here, and a large serrated edge on top. So that was the coarse and the fine serrated. The tip is a spear shape, so you can actually poke things with it and everything. And this was made by Shakespeare, another tackle company. And yeah, it's stainless china. It's, your basic 420 steel in there and everything. You got the lanyard hole like the other one, and you got the drain hole in the bottom there. Plastic, heavy plastic sheath on there, and it can go on a belt. So this one was actually designed to be worn by the fishermen as opposed to being thrown into the tackle box. And that brings us to the next two, which are actual bait knives made by a knife company. And you'll see the difference between now the $5, $6 knife that the tackle companies sell anglers, and they're more than satisfied with it, versus the knives that knife companies attempt to sell to anglers, and probably why they miss the mark, because I got a feeling most fishermen go, why do I need that when I can do everything it's going to be doing with this? Now the next two knives are made by Buck. This first one is the Buck Silver Creek. This one is made in China. It's a 9-inch knife. Comes with a hard plastic sheath, and you notice here it has a place for your belt, and you can actually just slip it onto your belt. You don't have to remove your belt to hook this onto the belt. It also has a hole here so that you can attach a lanyard through this and tie it to your gear, something like that. And you notice it also has the drain holes, which are kind of important for around water. And here's the knife. It's got a I think it's about a 9-inch knife. I'll give it in the specs in the slideshow. But you see there, this is basically a nice little hunting knife, a little camp knife that has been turned into a bait knife, similar to the way the old camp knives were turned into fish knives. The only difference is instead of having a fish scaler across the top there, you have a serrated edge running across the top, and then the fine edge on the bottom, so you can do whatever cutting, rough cutting you need to do here, cutting through rope or anything else that way, and then your fine edge over here. What I one of the problems I have with this knife is the way the blade profile is, or the handle profile is. Notice how it doesn't get smaller like you have on the bait knives. So it's more difficult to pinch up on the blade from the handle. It just isn't a smooth transition. And because this is a metal, as a stainless steel guard, there's no way to easily grind that down to meet up. The other thing, though, the plus on it is this is a full tang knife, which is a good sign. You know, the tang runs all the way through, and you have the lanyard on the back side here, and you notice you have an overmolding, a softer overmolding over a heavier rubber insert on the handle. Feels really good in the hand. You got a full grip on the hand also. When you're just using it as a regular knife, it feels a whole lot better. The only problem I have with it is that you just can't pinch down on it like that. And this is the Silver Creek. It's made in China. It uses 420 J2 steel. So the steel in this knife is not really that much better than the steel in this knife. And this knife, it's much easier to grab here and hold the blade. Got to be careful where you're pushing down here because of the little cutout there, but still, to me, this is a better design for a bait knife than the Silver Creek. But the Silver Creek is a sturdier knife and will work better as a general utility knife that can also function as a bait knife. So I guess that would be the way to put it. This is a much better camp knife, especially if it's a camp knife when you're going fishing. So, and yeah, clicks in there really well, and it's still small enough to just throw in the tackle box. So that's the Buck Silver Creek. These run somewhere around $25, so you're talking 4 times the amount that you pay for these inexpensive bait knives. Now my other one, I really need to do a video on this one because this is the Buck Clearwater, and this is the bait knife that I use almost all the time. This is the one that I actually use also as a camping knife. And you notice now you have also a belt loop, but the belt loop, you have to take the belt off to put it on. You see the drain holes and everything there. Yes, it rattles around, so if you're trying to sneak up on your enemy fish, you know, it's going to make some noise, unless you like rattle bait. But the knife comes out easy enough, and there you have it. That's the Silver Creek. You notice now the handle, it has a weird pinch, but you do have a good grip there. You can actually grip into there with the way this is cut. And also you have the ability to press like that and press down, so you can also grab right there and feel like you're pinching good. You got a 5-inch blade, a much slimmer blade than on the other knife. Yeah, you can see I have been using this quite a bit. And you've got just the serrated edge near the top there, so you can actually get your thumb on the back of this blade without having to worry about anything, as long as you don't go too far up. And you got a nice little pokey point there. So that's my Buck Clearwater. And it is full tang, as you can see there, and you can attach a lanyard to it if you need to. And you got the nice little finger choil there, which feels really good when you're using this knife. So not as good this way when you're cutting down through that, but this way. If you're cutting, you're going to have to probably be up into there, and that's when you can actually cut into the bone and stuff. But anyway, I'll have to do another video on this one later. Really comfortable grip on it and everything else, but also this one was now approaching $35–40. So and it's by a a knife company versus a tackle company, if and it's using 420 HC, Buck 420 HC stainless steel, so it's a much better steel than the 420 steel you have in the other knives. So is it worth it? Well, that really depends on the individual and their individual perspective. For me, yes, I'm glad I bought this knife. I use it for more than just a bait knife. It's a good knife around the kitchen. It's a good knife for carving. It's a good knife for chopping up stuff. And it's a good, it'd make a really good camp knife if I ever went camping again. And, it's got a good sheath on there that can be worn in multiple places. And this is a bait knife that is on my little tackle bag. I got a little bag for going fishing, and it's one that goes out all the time with me because I like it, and it's a useful knife, and it's a good size. It's bigger than your typical bait knife. So yeah, it's worth it. I'm glad I got it, and but at the same time, it's a $40 knife. For many anglers, this South Bend knife that costs $6 is going to do everything that buck knife does for them when they're going fishing. It depends. Are you a weekend angler? Are you somebody who's out on the water almost every day fishing, things of that nature? And are you looking for something a little bit of a better quality? That all comes into it. But this is a nice, comfortable knife. It's easy to use. You're going to have to sharpen it more than you're going to need to sharpen the buck, but it gets the job done. So, and for pennies versus, well, not pennies, but you're looking at, $7, $40. Readily available these days too. This one's getting harder to find. So, that's what it comes down to with the bait knives. But as a collector, if you're looking for knives to collect and you're on a budget, these are really handy little knives, and they're a great knife just to have around the workbench. And when they get bad or get screwed up, you don't feel bad. Where's it at? I actually use this knife to baton into wood. I was actually whacking on the back of it with a stick, cutting into 2x4s and also into plywood and stuff, so that I could pry out wood and stuff when I was building something. And I just needed something, that I wasn't worried about breaking or anything else. So you can actually baton with this thing, and it did a fine job with it. So yeah, they're strong, they're sturdy. I have nothing to complain about with them. So you can get a good beater knife for $2 or $3, and you can get some of them for just a little bit more that look pretty cool. And so that's the story of the bait knife for the collector, and also kind of like where I think they evolved from, and just the fact that it's an all-around useful knife in the tackle box, in the kitchen, around the campfire, wherever you need it, and they're dirt cheap. And it's one of those knives that I don't know what else to say. They're pretty dang good knives, especially for the price. You can get a better priced one from a knife company, or you can buy one that just is a no-name bait knife, or you can buy one that is through a tackle company like South Bend or Berkeley, or you name it. They all have some kind of bait knife out there, Rapala. Anyway, I'm going to cut off now and let you go. It's like now I'm just really rambling. Maybe I'll have some slides. Hopefully I'll have some slides. Talk to you soon. let me take just a second to thank you once again for dropping by and spending a few minutes here at Knife Chats with the Pious. I really do appreciate it, and I do appreciate any comments that you leave. So please remember to give me that thumbs up, and also don't forget to subscribe and ring that notification bell so you'll know when the next episode is up and running. Thanks again for dropping by. Really do appreciate your time here.